So it does seem like it's important to track the entire asset class. And what you notice the same thing. I mean, you generally see lengthening cycles and diminishing returns. The angle of attack each cycle seems to be a bit lower. Obviously, it's not a perfect fit or anything, but you get the idea. And you also sort of see this.
All right, welcome back everybody to Altcoin Daily. My name's Austin, here with Aaron, joined by the great, powerful Ben of Into the Cryptoverse. Awesome YouTube channel. He is a data analyst and I guess quantitative analyst. Would that be accurate, Ben?
Yeah, I think more or less that covers it.
Awesome, man. Well, I love your channel. I think a lot of our audience watches you, but how you doing? Christmas season.
Yeah, doing great. Crypto markets are fun as always, and it's great to be back on the channel again. So I look forward to having you guys on my channel in the coming weeks as well.
Definitely. Now, Ben, we're getting into 2022, and throughout this whole year, people have been talking about the four-year cycle. For the past 4 years, the four-year cycle. And for the past couple of years, you've been saying, well, wait a minute, guys, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that cycles are lengthening. You're going into 2022, and it seems like we haven't topped out yet. How exciting is that you've been saying this forever?
I mean, it feels pretty good. And I think, to a large extent, the fact that we're going into 2022, Bitcoin's not even trading for 2.5 times its prior all-time high. And it seems like the market is extremely fearful. I mean, I probably could not have dreamed up a better scenario, for lengthening cycles to play out. So I think we're right where we should be, to be completely honest. If anything, if you had asked me in 2019, I would not have even thought we would have been this far for Bitcoin. So I'm pretty excited about where we are. And I think 2022 is going to be a good year.
Well, on that note, let's flip it around. Show us the charts, show us the data.
Definitely. Yeah, so I think it always comes back to the data. Can you guys see my screen fine?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that really you just got to go back to the data. What does the data suggest? And again, it's not like we're taking any of these charts to the bank or anything, but what it does show is that, look, the 4-year cycle is, I think a lot of it is recency bias, because you guys were there for the last cycle. I followed you guys back in, I followed you guys back in early 2018, and we were there for the last cycle. We saw what happened, and it was a 4-year cycle, right? It was a 4-year cycle. And I think people look at that and they think that every cycle has to be 4 years. But I would argue that there's actually a lot of evidence to suggest that, look, the cycles are actually lengthening. And if you plot prior market cycles, which again are somewhat subjective, of course, this is what I get, right? I get cycle 1 in the blue, cycle 2 in orange, cycle 3 in yellow, and then we get cycle 4. And the main anomaly, I think, for this cycle was that we were ahead of schedule. And we were actually ahead of cycle 3 at one point earlier this year. And I thought that we were relatively ahead of schedule. And we needed to come back down for a while. And we did. We had a 3 to 6 month lull in the market, and now we're sort of where we need to be. And you can also look that once upon a time, this cycle was actually ahead of cycle 2, way back early on. And we sort of had a similar pattern, right? Where we came up above it, we went down for a while, and then we ultimately continued on. And now I think we're sort of doing something similar where we should continue on. But there is a lot of fear. But I think ultimately that fear is going to continue to drive this cycle, as maybe people realize that there's more to Bitcoin than just going up and down every 4 years on schedule. I think this chart is a great example of that. And another chart that is basically just very similar to this is just looking at the same thing on a linear scale, and we expect it. I mean, I expect diminishing returns fully, but even with diminishing returns, Bitcoin could go 100K, 200K. I mean, we won't get the same returns as last cycle until Bitcoin were to hit $300,000. So I think we have a long way to go. And what you notice is that every cycle kind of has this popping moment. As you can see, the first cycle, it happened after 300 days or so. Second cycle happened 700 something days. Third cycle happened around, just below 1100 days. Currently, we're already beyond that. And people think the cycle's over. I'm still waiting for that final pop, right?
Let me ask you something. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you said you're expecting diminishing returns, as in each cycle, the return percentage gains gets less and less. Last cycle, from Bitcoin's all-time high, of 1,000, 1,300, whatever it was, from that previous all-time high, it went to almost 20,000. It was basically a 21x. if Bitcoin were to 21x from its all-time high of 20,000 this cycle, that would put Bitcoin at $420,000. So even if it did, you're saying, like, if it went to $200,000, that would still only be a 10x. Like, I would still think maybe we could still get above $200,000.
So it's possible. I think I would agree. I think diminishing returns is going to play out, but it's also going to play out not from top to top for sure, because I don't think we're going to make it to 400K. It's possible we go above 200K. I think to get above 200K, the best way to do it is for the cycle to extend to 2023, to be completely honest, which I know sounds like a weird theory that it could go that far. But look, I mean, most people didn't think we'd be at less than 50K by the end of 2021. So there's a lot of things I think are possible here. So yeah, I think it's possible we could do that, but I think in order to go that high, we need a lot more time. If you measure it from the cycle bottom, from the last cycle, I believe the market cycle bottom in 2015, January 2015, was around like $170 or so. So let's just call it $200. We know we went to 20K, 100x. It was a little bit over 100x. This market cycle, the bottom was around 3,100. So 100x from there would put us at over $300,000. So for me, I don't think Bitcoin can make it to 300K. I think it's possible. It certainly seems possible to make it to like 150, 200 potentially. And, I've always had a hard time thinking about it going above 200 this market cycle. I think the only way that it can do it is if it really extends potentially out into 2023.
You have one more chart, correct?
I think this is this chart is a great chart, I think, to look at. But this is the total crypto market cap, not just Bitcoin, which I think is important because look, the Bitcoin dominance is decreasing over the macro scale. As much as we all love Bitcoin, we love altcoins too. I think altcoins are great to have in your portfolio, but obviously they're no Bitcoin. But in terms of looking at the entire market capitalization, I think it actually shows another perspective as well, because like now's a great time where you see the Bitcoin price has been at a downtrend that we might be breaking, but it's been in a downtrend for the last 4 or 5 weeks. We're seeing some altcoins rally, right? I mean, Matic's rallying, Luna's rallying, Avalanche is rallying. So it does seem like it's important to track the entire asset class. And what you notice the same thing. I mean, you generally see lengthening cycles and diminishing returns. The angle of attack each cycle seems to be a bit lower. Obviously, it's not a perfect fit or anything, but you get the idea. And you also sort of see this wave sort of form where first cycle is just super up super quickly and then back down, right? It was a year and a half up and then about a year down sideways before we got this cycle, which was about 2.5 years. I think the reason some people think 4 years is because they combine this one and this one. Okay, but for me, this is a completely different cycle. Top of the log band. This is what sort of separates it.
I feel like based on what you're showing us, it's almost like, we're going to get into 2022 and I feel like you're going to tell us, hey guys, all my data is indicating beginning of 2023 is when the top is going to be.
It could be as late as that. It's funny because every cycle recently, it seems like it's ended in like November, December. 2011, it ended in June. In fact, this summer.
What percentage chance at this moment do you think that we go into 2023? High percentage, mid percentage, low? Just possible?
I'd say, I've always been a fan of 2023. Because I don't actually have the chart to show you, but if you do like an Arrhenius plot of 1 over time versus prior peaks, and you fit it to a function and then extrapolate out when the next peak would be, the next market cycle peak, I should say, because you can have local tops like we had back in April and May, and you can have those, of course. But if you do that analysis, it actually puts the next peak. I hate saying it because it usually gets a lot of flack, but it actually puts the next peak in the summer of 2023, not just the beginning of 2023. But I certainly think that, people ask me, well, does a lengthened cycle, does that just mean it's going to have a market cycle peak in Q1? I think that's unlikely. I don't think we're going to have a peak in Q1. Potentially, maybe Q2, but even then, I would say it's more likely to be Q3 than Q2. So I think, once we get into Q3, we got to start thinking, hey, we could be getting to a market cycle peak if we're, especially if Bitcoin's going through this rally. And one thing I think people should be aware of now, just quickly, is, if Bitcoin does put in new all-time highs and goes to 100K, 150K, there could be a lot of people that just assume that we're not going to have any more bear markets, and the 4-year cycle has been a thing that's always been around, which it hasn't, I don't think. And they might just assume that we're in a super cycle, and then that's when the bear market hits. When everyone kind of thinks that bear markets are over. So So I still think there's reason to be cautious, but I do think the entire asset class should trend to approximately 10 trillion this cycle. But it could go well into 2022, maybe even 2023.
Interesting. And do we have one more chart, or this was the final one?
This was the only other chart was this one, and it's basically just looking at so what it is, it's the percent difference between that white line here, the total market cap, and then the fair value logarithmic regression line, which is the red line. So if you do that, and I'm just shifting it by 100%, so you can easily see the undervaluation regions. What I look for is I look for these local tops, and I've noted some of the similarities between the 2013 cycle and the current cycle, and I do think there's a lot of similarities, but at the very least, it's a stretched out version of that cycle. Okay, and so that was why I've said I don't think it's going to end in 2021, but that it's probably going to come way out over here somewhere. So I look at this, I say, look, it's true. April for Bitcoin, it was a local top, and we could have another local top before a market cycle top. I mean, imagine potentially getting another local top at around 100K, and then maybe everyone thinks it's over at that point. And then we go on a parabolic rally. I don't know about you guys, but I track, when I look at the YouTube stats and whatnot, it certainly seems like we haven't seen quite the same surge of new people in the space that we saw back in March and April. So I think getting Bitcoin over 100K would bring a lot more people into the space, and that would probably lead to the final blow off mania rally phase that'll probably usher in the market cycle peak for this cycle.
Let's take us off screen share, Ben. And I want to ask you about altcoins in a second, but I would love for you to just sum up your investor's thesis for Bitcoin and give your either cycle prediction or 2022 prediction for Bitcoin.
Yeah, so I think that if we start with 2021, it's mostly been a sideways year, right? Between 30 and 60K. For Bitcoin, I mean, for Ethereum, it's up a lot, right? But for Bitcoin, it's been mostly a sideways year. I think it's just an long accumulation year, honestly. And there's some scary times, of course. It was scary in May. It was scary in July. It was scary in September. It's now scary in November and December. But I think we're going to look back, and it's just going to be one huge opportunity to buy the dip one after another. So I do think 2022, there will be new all-time highs. That doesn't mean there's not going to be phases where we go down, just like in 2021, in 2020, there's still phases where you're going to see that downside. I think the chances that we break 100K in 2022 are pretty high. And I was always clear, I don't think it's going to happen in 2021. I never thought 100K was going to happen in 2021. But to be fair, I didn't think 69K was going to happen in 2021 either. So I do think we're probably going to break above 100K, but I don't think it's necessarily going to happen in like January. I think there's going to be some stepping stones to get there. There could be some more shakeouts to get, before we climb higher from this point. And depending on how heated it gets in 2022, if it doesn't get super heated, then I would for sure think it could go into 2023. And look, fundamentally, I mean, I think that it looks great, right? I mean, you have you got countries buying the dip, right? I mean, MicroStrategy still buying. Be nice if we could get another catalyst, like another major institution like Apple or someone like that to buy buy Bitcoin and really get the narrative going again. I think that would be great, and sort of what I'm looking for in 2022.
Fill in the blank, Ben. Bitcoin never goes below blank again.
I mean, I could always be conservative, of course. Look, I mean, my thoughts are this. I don't think we're ever going to go to 10K. I think that the likelihood we go to 20, because the 10K stuff comes from people saying the bear market, right? I don't think we ever go to 10K. I think it's highly, highly unlikely we go to 20. 30K is probably still a pipe dream. Every time Bitcoin has held the bull market support band, which is the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA, every time we've held that in the past, we've never gone below that value, ever. I'm not saying we can't, but the last time we held it was at 40K. So I'd like to think that 40K is the line in the sand that we would like to not go below. So I'm still thinking 40K is sort of probably the way that I can not be super conservative about it and not just do a cop-out answer like 20K or something, but to also give it a little bit more room to come down in the event we get like another shakeout or something before we move back up.
And I know Aaron has an altcoin question. Before that, one just sort of follow up, and we've kind of already addressed this, but based on the data, what quarter of what year do you see the top for your best projection? Do you see the top of this current bull cycle? We've talked about what it could do. Your opinion, what will that quarter be?
Yeah. It's interesting because if you think about the 2020 run going into 2021, it took 6 months, So like if we do get another rally for Bitcoin, which I think we will, I can't assume it's only going to take place over a month or two. It's got to be a long build up, long surge to the new all-time highs. I mean, it seems that it has to at least be 6 months out at the very least for, I just can't imagine it happening in Q1. I can barely imagine it happening in Q2. Maybe Q3, but then you also get the same type of seasonality that maybe the market cycle peak is in December, but it's just December of 2022, not 2021. Look, it's hard to say it's hard to say a date, because then if we get to that date and we're not at the values that I think we should be at, then I'm just going to say I think we're going to keep going.
And that would be smart.
Yeah. So I mean, I would say, I've always said I think 2023 is a possibility, right? I always think that. So I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to say 20. You said quarter. Yeah, maybe like Q2 2023 is where I would put the highest probability. As crazy as that sounds. But look, if we're trading for 150K or 200K in 2022, you got to understand that could be the cycle top, right? I'm not gonna wait around until 2023 if Bitcoin's trading for 200K in 2022.
Very interesting.
I love it. I encourage our whole audience to go subscribe to Ben's channel, linked in the comments or description below. And my final question for you, Ben, is something I think people really appreciate about you is, you don't own a million altcoins. You really only own altcoins that you truly believe in, a small handful. And you're really looking for the quality altcoin projects. And if you have one for Ben, check the comments below. Ben will be looking at the comments to find out what you think is quality. But my question for you, Benjamin, is clue us in to the quality altcoin projects that you hold, that you believe in, not financial advice.
Right. Look, it's hard to go wrong with layer ones. I mean, look at the price action for 2021. And I think crypto is somewhat, cyclical, and not just in terms of market cycles, but also in terms of what altcoins are pumping when, right? Everyone remembers the DeFi summer of 2020. But look, I think some of the best projects that I like to follow, obviously there's Ethereum, but I think that's sort of the altcoin index. You want your altcoins to outperform Ethereum, or at least oscillate against it. If they don't, why do you hold it? Because you're taking on more risk than by just not holding Ethereum. So look at their Ether values over the macro scale. Some of the great projects, Matic, I think, is a good project. Layer 2 scaling is important. But also Cardano, Polkadot, Avalanche. Solana, I think it's decent. It's a little bit more centralized than I would like, but it doesn't mean that that's necessarily a bad thing for some people, because some people just prefer that, right? Some people prefer that. Chainlink is an interesting one because it's one that did really well in the bear market, and I hold it, and it's not met my expectations this market cycle, to be completely honest. And maybe you guys feel the same way. I'm looking for that one to do something good in 2022, because frankly, it's down 90% against Ethereum over the last 18 months. And it's not easy to recover from. Think about how much it has to go up just to get back to where it was in August of 2020 against ETH. So I'd say the main projects that I follow: Cardano, Polkadot, Avalanche, Matic, Luna, Solana. It's really hard to go wrong if you just look at the top 10 or 20, get layer ones, a couple layer twos, an Oracle. I think that's a great crypto portfolio right there.
Give us one low cap gem that you're looking into.
None.
That's why we like you, Ben.
Benjamin Cowen, into the cryptoverse, links down below. Dude, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Final thoughts for the Altcoin Daily Army.
Yeah, I think final thoughts are, look, there's shakeouts along the way, and they're meant to make you fearful, right? The market is brutal. The market is so brutal. Look at 2017. So many 40% corrections, so many 30% corrections. But then you look back, and it always seems so obvious. So, look, I would look at this stuff as a long-term investment. Just like you would have stocks in your portfolio, like you might have precious metals or real estate or commodities, whatever. Crypto's here to stay. And even outside of market cycles, even if you think market cycles are complete, made up and they're not real. Yeah, that's great. Like more power, right? Like it's an investment into an asset class that's revolutionizing the world. So sometimes you just have to, as I said before, right? You don't always have to time the tops and the bottoms. You just need to get a ticket to the show. So get your ticket and enjoy the ride.
Boom. Thank you so much.